Excellencies, esteemed ministers, and distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to represent Jordan as the Jordan Civil Society Rapporteur in this ministerial meeting. I am personally and on behalf of the Jordanian civil society sincerely grateful for your leadership in organizing this important discussion about the humanitarian situation and the needs of Syrian refugees, both in Syria and throughout the region. After over 9 years into the Syrian conflict, the refugee response in Jordan has reached a critical point as the kingdom has come to host over 650,000 refugees. While the conditions of displacement have led to irrevocable impact on the opportunities and prospects for Syrian refugees, Jordan and the international community have striven to prioritize both the immediate and long-term needs of Syrian refugees and host communities. Indeed, Jordan and the international community have made notable efforts to support their resilience over the past several years. Yet, in order to preserve the successes Jordan has attained, the international community must invest not only in supporting health services and basic needs within the response, but also through a longer-term commitment to supporting economic recovery in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the new challenges that accompanied it. Funding and programming must adapt to the new developments in order to support strategic planning, address protection and livelihood needs, and empower national and local stakeholders. It is essential that Jordan continues to receive backing in setting a regional example on refugee policy. There must be adequate levels of international assistance to meet the many challenges Jordan is facing and support the kingdom in meeting the commitments it made alongside the international community over the last several years. Continued follow-up and engagement with civil society to address these ongoing needs while incorporating a variety of voices and perspectives is a cross-cutting theme that is integral to the broader response. In spite of a decade of low economic growth and rising unemployment and public debt, Jordan has piloted innovative approaches to addressing the protection and assistance concerns of Syrian refugees and host communities. Jordan is currently entering a more challenging period as it faces the difficult task of balancing the health risks created by COVID-19 against the economic pressures the pandemic has affected. In light of the mounting challenges, the COVID-19 has compounded. International support is critically needed. The loss of household incomes in Jordan has particularly impacted Syrian refugees, who comprise approximately 60% of the informal sector. Many of the Syrian refugees have lost employment opportunities as a consequence of restrictions on movement. Rising economic vulnerability, as well as greater reliance on negative coping mechanisms and protection concerns, are expected to increase among refugee communities and the poorest segments of society in Jordan. Notwithstanding, the protection and personal rights of women and girls remain a priority to address, and gender-based discrimination and violence must also be addressed. This has become a principal concern in the wake of the pandemic due to current barriers to seeking assistance in person. We therefore must work to minimize the negative socio-economic and protection repercussions of COVID-19 as much as humanly possible for vulnerable communities. Moreover, in light of these challenges, we must all acknowledge and prioritize the important role of civil society as a partner and effective responder in Jordan and the broader region. Both local and international civil society are essential resources within the Syria response, and their expertise and knowledge must be integrated throughout interventions aimed at protection, education, livelihoods, and health. There are opportunities to better engage with and improve the participation of national civil society organizations, particularly through support to national stakeholders in the transition to the humanitarian development nexus agenda and long-term planning for a refugee-centered response within resilient and hospitable host communities. Consequently, we must work towards fulfilling the Grand Bargain commitments to ensure sustainable ownership at the community level, which was recognized in the Jordan Response Plan through linkages to the SDGs and by prioritizing consultations with civil society. And while there has been significant regional progress in incorporating and harnessing the capabilities of civil society, there is still room for greater engagement and participation. In Jordan in particular, the level of funding for national NGOs remains low, and greater efforts must be developed to monitor progress on localization, not only to track direct funding to local civil society, but also to lay the foundation for platforms that allow for enhanced local engagement and participation. As the Syrian conflict continues unabated and the need for political dialogue to bring an end to the crisis remains essential, we all have a role to play in safeguarding the welfare and livelihoods of Syrian refugees in Jordan and the region at large. Esteemed partners, friends, and colleagues, we must prioritize suitable support to host communities and sustainable ownership at the community level in order to face the existing and rising challenges. And because humanitarian needs will shrink decisively when and where more sustainable development is achieved, as rightly noted by Helen Clark, the administrator of the UNDP, we must arduously work to bolster the level of self-resilience and reliance of vulnerable communities. Thank you all for your patience. I wish you all a very good and fruitful discussion.